Hey, I'm Dr. Tom Miller, and I believe that the leader's job is one of the most interrupted jobs on the planet. Every single day, there's a fire that you have to put out. Every day, there's an employee that you have to talk to. And every day, there's a challenge that you have to be thinking on. So thanks so much for taking about 12 to 13 minutes here that I believe is going to change your life if you implement and you start to practice it. So first, make sure that you've downloaded the workbook and printed that out, because that's going to go along with these exercises today, right? So hit the pause button if you haven't, go ahead and do that now. So let me just start right here. It was a May morning about 10 years ago. My wife woke up and I said, "Hey, good morning, honey. What does a heart attack feel like?" And she was like, wait, what do you mean? Why would you ask me such a question? I said, I don't know. I woke up a couple hours ago and I don't really feel that good. So she said, all right, look, you need to lay back down, and I'm going to turn the lights out. Let's just try to calm you down, and let's see. And I'm going to call the doctor. So I get into bed and I reach over for my BlackBerry at the time, and I send a text message to my boss, say, "Hey, I'm having some health issues here, but I'll be in as soon as I can." Right? Normal principal mentality is like, I'll be in as soon as I can. It'll pass over soon. So I did end up going to the doctor, and he checked me out, and it just ended up really being high stress with dehydration. And so, but while he was checking me out, he asked me, he said, so what do you do for a living? And I said, "Oh, I'm a school principal." And he said, "Oh, that's pretty much right." I was like, what does that mean? He goes, "Well, based upon your blood pressure and your stress levels and everything else, and let's be honest, you're not really taking care of yourself. You're overweight." And I was like, "Whoa, take it easy, doc." Kind of got offense to that. He said, "Look, just to remember, you only get one shot on this beautiful blue earth. So make sure that you're spending it doing the right things with the right people." I mean, those words changed my life. So I only got a couple minutes. So I just, so I want to share with you a little bit about how it changed my life, and some of the strategies that I used, and to maybe help you reduce that stress and start to live that life. Now, if you want to work with me, or if you want to learn more about it, you can email me at tom@lbleaders.com, or click on one of the buttons below and schedule a time with me, and that'd be awesome, because I'd really love to help you. But first, let's just get to this, right? So open up your workbook here, and you should be at the top of your workbook on page 1, right? So let's just look at the School Leader Daily 5. The School Leader Daily 5. These are the 5 things that a leader should prioritize on their calendar every single day, right? And I know it's crazy because you do millions of things a day, but there's only really 5 things that you should do. Now, how do you get there? Well, the first thing you do is you need to know and understand the Pareto principle. Now, I'm a certified John Maxwell coach and trainer, and I never heard of the Pareto principle until John had taught me about it. It's in his law of priorities. But the Pareto principle basically says is that 20% of your activities, right? 20% of your prioritized activities are going to get you 80% of your overall return. If you spend 80% of your time, your money, your personnel on those top 20%. Okay. So let's just look at this. As you're looking at the graph here, as you can see, 20% of your activities brings 80% of your results, and those other 80% of your activities basically brings 20% of your results, right? I don't really like those returns. But here's how the 80-20 principle shows up in our life. I mean, 80% of the clothes that you wear come from 20% of the clothes that you actually own. 80% of the content that you need from a book only comes from 20% of the pages. Right? Probably 80% of the content you need is going to come from 20% of this actual presentation to you. 80% of your problems come from 20% of your people, right? Or 20% of your broken systems. 80% of your volunteer hours come from 20% of your parents. 80% of your referrals come from 20% of your teachers, and probably 20% of your student base too, right? I mean, I'm right. So what this, basically says, and what uh, Pareto was, sharing with us, is that if you're going to like cut down a tree, like Abraham Lincoln said, if you give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend 4 hours sharpening the blade. Like, you've got to focus your time on what's most important. And so if you have a to-do list right there in front of you, or whatever you use to plan out your day, it's your job on a daily basis to identify what are the top two things, right? What are the one or two priorities that only I can and should be doing for this organization? Everything else should be delegated to someone else, or someone should be empowered or trained to do it, or maybe even better, you need to stop doing it. So I'll show you how to get to that process, because I can hear what you're thinking. It's like, well, there's just no way I could prioritize. There's just, so many things. There's, all these, challenges. Everything's always flying. I get it. I've been there. I've done it. But I want you to catch this before I move on. So if the 80-20 principle is real, which it is in everything we have, that means that 80% of your time as a leader needs to be spent with your top 20% of your people, because they're the ones that are going to give you that 80% return on the back end. And what I did as a principal, which was a giant mistake, is I spent 80% of my time with the bottom 20% of my people. Right? If I could just get them to that top half, gosh, we'd be such a better school. When my top 20% of people were like, well, what do I have to do to get Tom's attention? So you've got to be really, focused. Remember what that doctor said, who you spend your time with. And then the second mistake that I've made is that, when I look at this 80% of my activities, I'm like, oh, those will only take a couple minutes. Let me just do a couple of them right now. And, right now turns into 2 hours, and then I don't have any time to actually focus on what the most important part was, right? You with me? All right. So go ahead and turn the page. So, all right. So now we understand the Pareto principle. And so if you're having, difficulty identifying what your priorities are, answer these three questions. Okay. Number one, what is required of me? And this means that these are the items that only you can and should do for yourself, that nobody in your organization, on your team that you know of can do for you. Okay. Anything that anybody can do at an 80% level of view, you got to delegate it to them. You got to empower them, and you have to give it to them. And I know you don't have anybody in your team and there's no one to empower. I hear you. I've been there. Give me a second. The second question is, what does the organization get the greatest return at it when I do them? Okay. So this means you need to have an understanding of your gifts, of your strengths, of what you've been successful at in your past experience. Now, sometimes you might be the person in the organization who has the most experience with everything. Okay. So part of this process is, as you're doing the work, you're identifying people that you're going to train to do the work. But you're not going to do that for very long. You're going to put yourself on a very short leash to get to that point, okay? And then the last one is, what rewards me, okay? What fuels and fills my heart? What am I passionate about? Now, when you're able to line up those 3 R's, every single day is bliss, right? You don't mind going to work. You enjoy the challenge because you're focusing on things that you do well. You're focusing on things that are going to give the organization the greatest return. And you're focusing on things that fill your heart. Now, 3 more questions to be able to help you to get there. So every single day when you make your list, when you make your to-do list, you're going to ask these questions, okay? Because you've already started to work through your 3 R's and you already started to identify these things. This is like the ultimate test right here. Does this need to be done? And part 2 is, does it need to be done by me, right? So does this need to be done? So we do a lot of things as principals that really don't need to be done anymore, right? And we'll find out whether or not they're important later when the authorizer sends us, a memo 2 weeks later or whatever. But we'll learn if it's important or not, right, when a fire breaks out. But knowing whether or not you have to do it or not is so important. Now, the second question is there anybody else who can do it for me? And if that answer is yes, give it to them, right? Tell them what to do, be very clear. Now, the last question, and if you say no to that one, then you have to answer, well, who can I train to do it? And that's where you're going to put that time frame in, right? So just, recently when I was taking over a school, I was doing human resources. I was doing payroll. I was the leader of the school. I was hiring teachers. I was hiring principals. I was doing everything. And every day I would take these, three, and I started to find people and empower people. I found some third-party vendors that were able to do my accounts payable. I found some front office people that I just needed them to just open the mail, file things and scan it and send it to them, right? I was just finding ways and building systems to be able to free up my time. Because see, your time is your most precious resource. It's the only way that we're all equal. But some people are just really good at how they utilize their time, right? So those are the three questions. And ultimately, if you think about it, your job is to work yourself out of a job, right? Your job is to empower so many people that you just walk around all day, right? Adding value to people and doing those things and checking in, inspecting what you expect is what I call it. So at the bottom here, this is Cubbies Quadrant. So this is just another way for you to really start to look at the work that you do on a daily basis. Okay, you've got these 4 quadrants here, and I want you to pay close attention to. As a leader, I want you to take your tasks and start, dropping them in here on a daily basis and start to see where they fall. You want to be working as much as possible in quadrant 2. That should be 80% of your time right there. Quadrant 2. Preparing, planning, relationship building, reevaluation, strategy, like that's what you should be spending the bulk of your time with. Because see, what happens, especially in our COVID world, is that we're running from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom meeting. And we're not building in space in between meetings to think, right? And create and process. And we're losing our leadership edge because of that. I don't want that to happen to you. So that's what you're going to do. Quadrant 1, you're going to start empowering people to do. Quadrant 3, you're going to start teaching and empowering people to do. Quadrant 4, you're just going to stop doing those things. That may be the most powerful thing that you can do here is create a stop doing list. So now you've gone through the process. This is how I started to do it. Now I know this is not where you're going, you're going to start thinking big, right? You're going to think big, but start really small, right? Because it's not going to happen overnight. Okay. You can't just start handing things over to people tomorrow unless they're already above the 80% line. You're going to have to build time to train and equip them. And I know that takes a lot of time to train people, but it takes more time down the road if you don't. And if you don't train people, right? If you don't train people, the people who are hungry are going to leave. And the only people that you're going to have left are the untrained. And if you think that underperforming is, costly, right? Just wait till you get the bill for incompetence. It's really expensive, right? So how do I define my daily 5? So I follow this 8-step process that's right here on page 3 for you. I've listed it all out, and this is how I came to my 5. Every day I add value to people. Every day I create. Every day I learn through podcasts and books. Every day I think, and every day I lead. And if something comes up in my world that's not in those 5, I just go through the process and I identify who can do it for me. So I hope this was helpful for you. Click on the link, schedule a one-on-one time. I would love to talk you through this and really help you understand the process. And every day, like your goal is just to get every day every week, 1% better. And just imagine, by the end of the year, if you grew by 1%, even if you took a 2-week vacation, you'd be 50% better than you were a year ago. And you'd have 50% more of your time back to do with what you want. I'm Tom Miller. I hope this was helpful. Learn more about what we do at lbleaders.com. Click the button below. Schedule a one-on-one. Let's have a conversation. Thanks.